Once you do that, pass it down the line, everyone will do the same.
So that would be beatboxing, if I had a superpower. Has anyone been or seen beatboxing? It's pretty phenomenal. AJ Meyer, Vice President of Business Development and Strategy for
As you can tell, AJ is a millennial.
A&F Group. And A&F Group is a 35-year-old family-owned construction company that also does real estate development for the family investment. We're involved in multifamily, institutional, commercial, retail, hospitality, construction, anywhere from the range of $5 to $85 million. We're based in Davie, Florida, but have our roots here in Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach County. Thank you.
Alicia Cervera Lamadrid. I'm the managing partner of Cervera Real Estate. Our firm has been around for about 48 years. We specialize in retailing condominiums for developers, and in that light, we developed or created the developer representation model about 30 years ago, and have sold over 110 buildings and 55,000 condominiums. And if I had a superpower this week, it would be reading Donald Trump's mind over the next
Everybody, sorry, Alicia, sorry to interrupt. Everybody in the back, if you could just, if you're going to have a conversation, just go around the corner so we can give everybody the respect on the panel. Thank you.
Carlos Rosso, I'm the president of Related, the condominium division. Been with George for now close to 20 years. Opening SLS Brickell tonight, great project in the middle of Brickell, which I think is going to change a little bit the perception of South Miami Avenue. And I agree with Alicia. If I had a superpower, I would really love to be able to read what is under that hair.
Good morning, everyone. Alex is over late, Senior VP Marcus and Chap here in Miami. We have over 80 offices all over the U.S., specializing in commercial investment sales and financing. Over the last year, we did over 250 transactions, strictly commercial and all product types. And if I had a superpower, I guess I could go back 5 years and buy more real estate.
That's right. Good morning, Rodrigo Spurua, Rivera Point Development Group. We develop suburban office buildings and limited service hotels. We started the company in the midst of the recession. And part of our unique proposition is that we have financed all our deals with EB-5 money. We have 100% approval rate. All our clients are currently green card holders and U.S. residents. And if I would have superpower, I would have amended all my investments prior to 2008.
Well, those are some good superpowers. I'd still hold beatboxing up at the top. No offense to my panelists here. That said, superpower, understanding Trump and his plans. So the most economists are saying that based on his plans and what he's saying right now, we'll see higher inflation rates, higher cap rates, and a higher yield on the dollar. So what does that mean, Carlos? What does that mean for us in terms of foreign investment and money's coming to South Florida and the U.S. for that matter?
I don't know, it's difficult to guess, right? Because he's also saying he's going to lower taxes, so people are going to have more disposable income, so maybe you see back the local buyer. So there's a lot of different things thrown out, that nobody really knows what the real plan is. And to tell you the truth, we are in a waiting mode. We want to see what happens from here till January 20th, who he picks, who he selects, and what's the direction that the country takes, because it's very difficult to predict. This campaign has been, bouncing on both sides of the aisle, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. So, my guess is that we need to keep waiting.
And Alex, I know in a few reports recently on The Real Deal and South Florida Business Journal, you've been asked that same question. Any thoughts on expectation kind of moving forward based on the Trump agenda?
Look, I'm cautiously optimistic. We really don't know what's going to happen, but I do believe that fundamentally the economy is on solid ground. I think barring any major policy implementation, we're going to continue to see foreign money coming in, which is really the topic of discussion here. Even under the assumption of inflationary pressures, we're going to continue to see real estate as an asset class of preference, because it is a hedge against inflation. Like I said, I think I think fundamentally we're on the ground.
Thank you. Let's jump to China really quick in terms of foreign investment. You have the yen that's falling, you have a volatile stock market, but yet you have over 1 billion people and a rising middle class in terms of wealth. What does that mean for us in terms of buying power into the U.S., but specifically South Florida marketplace? Alicia, would you like to share?
I think for us, the big thing with China, assuming that they allow people to get their money out, because I think that's the biggest challenge. Despite all of the internal things that are happening in China, people find a way to make money. We know that with our South American neighbors, regardless, up, down, sideways, elections, whatever. I think the biggest challenge is if they're going to let the Chinese people get the money out. It's pretty restrictive. Right now they can get $50,000 out a year, and although they're incredibly creative, you know, I've had one of my employees, for instance, her father gave everybody the day off and $50,000 to transfer to the United States. So they do all kinds of very interesting things. The other thing that I think is crucial for us is the airlift. If we have direct airlift and we think that's coming and we think it's coming in a big way, I hear as many as 3 flights, 3 different airlines I should say, that's going to be a tipping point for us. I think for anyone that walks around with their eyes open in Miami, we can see just organically more Chinese people all over the city. We know that they're doing business here, we know that big money's here, we know that small money follows big money. So China's coming, I think we're very close to that tipping point, and I think airlift is much more important than all of the other economic factors, and the ability to move money around the world, not only from China, but from many other countries as well.
Carlos, related, very involved in China in terms of the Chinese buyers?
We are there right now with the Real Deal. There's an event, I think, this week, and we're going back again and testing the waters. But as Alicia said, you know, it's interesting. You know, 2 years or 3 years ago, actually, we were invited by a Chinese broker to give a speech at You know, there's around 3,000 Chinese students between FIU and studying here. Most of them come from very wealthy families. You know, and I remember telling George, hey George, they want to go and hear you talk, you know, and it's like, why the hell I'm going to go and give a speech in you know, all these Chinese guys, you know, what do they care about me? And I said, like, George, these are the kids, these are the sons of very wealthy Chinese, so let's go and do the talk. No, you go and stand up and you do the talk. I'll do the introduction and then I have to go, there is a game and the Heat is playing or something. You know? And I said, okay, no problem, let's go together, you do the introduction and then I do the talk. We went to to the School of Architecture. The auditorium was packed with Chinese kids, you know? And George is, you do the introduction.
That says it all, I think.
So, you know, they're here, and we did the talk, you know, and funny enough, 2 weeks later, a Chinese couple in their 60s, you know, showed up at Paraíso. And they came to the sales center in Paraíso, and they were like standing there in front of the bay, looking at the bay, and you know, I happened to be in the sales center, and I presented, I introduced myself, and they said, well, we have our son is studying at and he heard George Perez. So he told us about George Perez this, George Perez that. We came to Paraíso, and we want 2. What do you mean you want 2? No, yeah, we want two units. No, 2 complete floors. And they bought, as a family, 12 units. 2 complete floors. Again, you know, it's like Alicia says, you know, you see them, they're there, there's still not a presence that it's not New York. You know, in New York we launched Hudson Yards, and we had to stop selling in China because there was such a big demand of Chinese buying at $4,000 a square foot. Again, you know, I think it's critical to have the airlift, to have the planes arrive here to Miami. Once that happens, it's going to change completely. You know, that's going to be night and day, and we all wish and hope that they invent that new Boeing 779 or whatever plane they need to bring them here. But you know, we should all pony up money. Part of our commissions, Alicia, to build that plane. You know.
Thank you for that, Carlos. Rodrigo, in terms of EB5, you're very active in that market, and obviously there's a lot of synergies with EB5 and the Chinese buyers. talk a little bit about what you're seeing in not only the EB5 market, but the Chinese market.
No question about it. The natural market for the EB5 visas is China. Even though we get a lot of activity from South America, China is still our main stream of investors. They have a lot of interest. EB5 is the first step. Is the first how I can get settled in the U.S. so then I can move all the wealth to the U.S. They do, by bringing the next generation, educating the next generation here in the U.S., bringing the wealth, assuring legally status. So that movement of wealth is happening, like they are seeing in the buildings, of course.
Just on a side note, sorry. We have an office in China with 200 people raising EB5 money for New York. We raised close to $700 million in EB5 money for Hudson Yards. So it gives you a little bit the spectrum of the size of that market. They do meetings like this, where they come, somebody from Related does a presentation in English, then the guy from Related leaves, there's a Chinese guy, that broker that talks, and suddenly from the sides of the walls, there are all these guys that come out with credit card machines, taking $5,000 deposits from Chinese buyers.
That's how aggressive it is. Yeah. That's how aggressive it is.
It is like that.
Our business are on smaller scales. Our developments go between $15 to $30 million. We do one offering a year, so it's easy to complete the raising, and it's easy for us to execute the project because we have a time constraint of 24 months to create the job, so they can remove the condition and be permanent resident cards. So our developments are on that scale. Our construction scale is only 14 months, so we have a good window that we can deliver the product. We can assure they can have the removal condition to stay here. But yes, it's as aggressive as Carlos described it.
So let me go a little bit further on the EB5 real quick with respect to some of the political environment here in the U.S. potentially changing some of that interest or hiring, increasing the requirements for folks to actually apply for that visa program.
There was a lot of uncertainty on the candidate race on this year, but for everything, not only for EB5. Fortunately for us, both candidates are very heavily involved in EB5. Trump and his relatives at the company used some EB5 in some of the development, and Secretary Clinton have many relatives heavily involved, either Washington and New York on the EB5. So both of them promote the program. Have in mind, EB5 is about 40 investment and job creation. Every politician wants to see that. That's the main flag. That's why we have so much support in all our developments. The sunset of the program was September 30th. It was extended for 30 days until December the 9th. And it sounds like going to be, there's a new bill, we're not talking in a second about it, but it seems that it's going to be extended again for another year, because the Congress doesn't seem to get the act together in 90 days. so it seems that another extension is coming along. So what are the big changes on the new bill? There's a lot of compliance with Securities and Exchange Commission that is very positive, so we can clean the industry of bad actors. There's a big shadow of bad actors in EB5 that this new bill is going to be able to wipe out, so that's very positive. And then the second big thing is the increase of the amount. What it used to be $1 million is proposed to be 1.2 million. What it was 500 is proposed to be 800,000. Have in mind that the program was created in 1990 and created 10 jobs with $500,000 was easier. Now it's, with present value of the money, it's not that easy. So the increase to create 10 jobs with $800,000 is very positive. The wealthy people that apply, all those people that Carlos is talking about on their office in China, they're going to apply for $800,000 regardless of the amount.
Thank you for that. What I found interesting was on Bloomberg. They actually called it the greatest border migration of capital in recent memory. Currently going on in China. But moving on, Alex, to you in terms of what you're seeing in the interest of foreign investment. You had mentioned on our call that you're seeing the interest move from the residential to the commercial, including some of the clients that you're working with. Share a little bit more about what you're seeing in that respect.
I think a big turning point was 2015 last year, where we saw about $2.3 billion worth of investments from foreign investors into commercial real estate, up from $468 million in 2014. That's pretty significant. Many of those investors are actually investors that happen to have been very active on the residential side, and they case in point, I have a client of mine from Argentina who had bought a bunch of units in different, high-rise condos, and I said, look, I think it's time to pause. I see a better opportunity in the commercial sector, better diversification, appreciation, creditworthiness of tenants, and a lot more demand than supply of products. So the numbers, I think, really do reflect a significant uptick on the commercial side, really across the board, retail, office, industrial. Many times these foreign buyers like to get in with easy product to own, which is the single tenant net lease, the Walgreens and CVS's, which there's really no management. Those tend to be pretty attractive option for them, yielding 6-7% return. Lever that, 8-9% return. So we've seen a tremendous increase in demand from foreign buyers. What also has helped dramatically since 2015, I know there's many lenders here in the audience, financing has become a lot more available to them, which was not the case in years past, certainly not the same as the last cycle. So when you combine availability of capital, the strength of the product, the diversification, and the appreciation potential, that really has made it an attractive proposition for many foreign investors. And we really are seeing from all over, not just Latin America, although most of the product that we work, $1 to $20, $25 million, it is significantly from Latin American countries, primarily Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Uruguay, Mexico as well. And when you go above that, more of the institutional deals, then you tend to see more European and Middle Eastern money as well.
Thank you, Alex. With respect to Latin America, Alicia, we've relied heavily on that Latin American buyer since the early 2000s, and given now the strengthening of the dollar and the weaker on the foreign investment side, what are you seeing from South America and Latin America as a whole in terms of the buyer pool?
Yeah, I would say that it's been long before 2000 that we relied on South America. It was probably since the inception of Miami as we know it today, starting with the Cubans, if you will, in '61 and so on. So, look, the strength of the dollar is the real question mark, right? When the dollar went up, I'm going to say it was about a year and a half ago, I was in the midst of converting 300 reservations. Nothing else had changed in the market. The demand was there. Nothing else had changed. The only thing that changed is the dollar took this great jump up. In the prior conversion, which was maybe 2 months before, I had lost maybe 1% of my reservations, maybe 2%. When I went to convert this building, I lost 33%, exactly 100 reservations. As you can imagine, one drink is not enough. So the strength of the dollar is the major factor. The reality is that the dollar is the currency in South America, regardless of what they're calling it locally. So when you have a crash like that and people are losing 30% of their wealth, 20%, pick a number, it's a shock. However, it's a shock that they're used to. That's the way it happens in South America. That's the way it's happened forever. And so people pause, they take a breath, they look at their entire portfolio. Most people with money are diversified there. So they lose money in their own country, they make money, relatively speaking, where they have their money outside of the country, they regroup and they keep going. So the big fear, and I was literally landing in Mexico City, turned on my phone at 7 o'clock and said, oh my God, Trump's winning. So that was a whole re-prep because we know how the Mexicans were feeling, and I had a team that was landing in London, so that was very interesting as well. And the real fear was that these economies, these currencies were going to crash even more. The reality is they didn't. They held. In Mexico, they were expecting it to go to 24. It bounced up to 21. It went down to 20 and change. And every day that goes by and we're not seeing that jump is a good day. I think that we're going to have a solid season. It's not going to be a runaway, phenomenal season, but I think it's going to be a solid season because the fundamentals are good and there's been good elections in South America. So the opportunity for people to make money in Central and South America is strong, and they have patterns of consistent good elections in some countries, as in Peru, for instance, etc. So I think that we're going to have a steady season this year, and I'm confident. I'm going to say confident, without cautiously even confident, that we're going to get some pleasant surprises from our president. And I will say also that we're at least talking about what's going to happen, which is refreshing for me. That in the last election, we were all just, hunkered down to more of the same. So I'm looking forward to some exciting good stuff.
And I want to address that, Carlos, with you, but in one moment. Rodrigo, in terms of your program with EB5 and the funding for South Americans and the strengthening of the dollar, is that something you're seeing as a negative, or how are you viewing that?
Definitely it has been a negative, but again, there's so high net worth people that it doesn't affect that much. It does, but not as much. It's different when you're selling properties in the $300,000, $400,000 that those buyers may be affected. But for our product, we haven't seen that. Still, Venezuela and Colombia are still very consistent. Of course, not on the dimension of the Chinese market, but they're still consistent coming with interest on apply for the EB5 visas. Of course, Ecuador, they have the U.S. currency, has been strong, so we have a lot of interest from Ecuador in the past 2 years. It's been very good. And Argentina now have some very important, deep changes in the banking law that is making or forcing them to make big move of money to the U.S. and we're getting a lot of interest from them.
Thank you. So Carlos, jumping back to that, you had mentioned on the call that you're still seeing a lot of interest for 17, potentially pushing into 18, but one of the things you mentioned is you're seeing a really good 19. Please explain kind of the context of what you're seeing in terms of the projections of 2 to 3 years.
Well, we have, just to give you just a little examples, we started closings at SLS Brickell 10 days ago, and in 10 days we've closed 120 units. Yesterday alone we closed 16 condos. We have around 4,000 closings planned for 2017. That's probably around 8 buildings that we're finishing in 2017. And we've already made plans, for and took positions in for Brickell, 1400, Terminal Island. We are preparing ourselves for the next start, which I think it's going to start again in 2018. 2017 is going to be a year where, as Alicia says, people are going to see the differences in Miami. Miami, particularly Brickell, I think, I walked Brickell City Center 2 days ago, and seeing what that corridor is going to become, from Brickell City Center to the SLS, with all the density, with all the units that are being, coming to the market, I think we're going to start seeing a new Miami. Talking with Stephen Owens the other day, and he told me that very soon they're going to announce the main tenant for the One Brickell City Center Tower, which is that humongous office building that they're building in the corner of 8th and Brickell Avenue. And again, we are starting to see other uses. So this cycle and the next cycle is not going to be just about condos. I think that's very different from the previous cycle. You start seeing more fundamentals and more different uses that are coming to different neighborhoods that are establishing themselves as a real, more organic growth. So you have condominiums, which were it's the first step, is to bring the people to these neighborhoods, and we build a lot of condos in Brickell. And Steve Owens said, "Thank you very much for all the condos that you built, because now I can build a shopping center." And we tell him, "Thank you very much for the shopping center that you built, because now we bought all the sites around you, and we are like the Apaches, rounding the fort." And we ask him, "Please start and announce an office building, because this is what really Brickell needs now. We need more jobs, we need to attract better companies." But I think that the companies are looking at Miami in a completely different way. If you come to a place like Brickell and suddenly you see 11 cinemas being open, luxury hotels being open, beautiful restaurants, I invite you all to come and see the restaurants at SLS, Jose Andres, Michael Shorts, opening in the middle of Brickell. People will want to come to live to these areas more than before. They become more and more attractive, and the uses start feeding of each other. So we see this as a great transformation, as a great urban transformation of Miami, and Miami will continue growing. So we are prepared, and we are preparing ourselves for a great start in 2018 again, of new condos and new projects.
So where's the shameless plug, SLS?
Sorry?
Opening tonight, SLS?
Opening tonight. Boy George is singing, and it's not George Perez. Somebody told me, so, Boy George, that George Perez is singing. No, it's Boy George. More or less the same age.
So we had the idea of just, scrapping this venue and just doing it over at the SLS with cocktails, right? But 7:30.
You're all welcome, 7:30.
So I wanted to thank you, Carlos, because thanks to guys like you and other residential developers that really have made, sort of cracked the floor, window, whatever you want to call it, for all the ceiling, for all the foreign buyers over the years to have come here, all those foreign buyers that are now very, very active on the commercial side, really they were introduced to Miami largely by the residential developers, and so now that they're here permanently, their kids are here, they really do see commercial as a long-term investment, and I think that's been a tremendous push for us. As a matter of fact, because of all the residential development, there's a lot more certainly supply than the commercial side, and that's why the fundamentals, I think, on the commercial side are so strong, and that's why such a product, such in high demand. With all the new residential product going up, there's not enough commercial product to meet that demand. Restaurants, office buildings, we heard in the last panel, there's not enough new product in the marketplace. That's what makes the commercial sector, I think, so attractive today in this cycle, because we haven't seen the overbuilding that we saw in prior cycles, so that's why I think it's very well positioned.
Rodrigo, anything you'd like to share in terms of the hospitality, office?
No question, the flair of the city, Miami right now wasn't there 15, 20 years ago. All that development that they're describing is there and make it very attractive international. Miami has the international brand that make it very attractive for the wealth to come and keep developing and keep growing and keep increasing. So we're in a very great location to do business locally and international, and we keep moving forward. Again, we at Rivera Point, we have focused on suburban office buildings under 100,000 square feet that make it very easy for the market to absorb, and limited service hotels, 100 to 150 rooms, again, easy to fund and great occupancy. So we keep moving forward.
If I may add one more thing, just to give you a little bit of numbers and perspective. In 2016, we've sold 2,000 units to 92 different countries, different nationalities. This didn't happen in the previous cycle. Miami's growing as a destination. Everybody loves Miami. People from, Thailand buying, Turkey right now, they're buying like crazy in Miami. It's attracting different nationalities, which is great for Miami. And Miami will continue growing and will continue improving. And people tell me, so what does Miami need? And I say, 2 million more people, Of the 2 million, 500,000 Chinese. We need more people, we need to become a bigger city, and a bigger city is going to do bigger things for the retail, for the commercial real estate. That's why you see more activity in the commercial side, because there's more people.
So 25% of that 2 million Chinese. And
we're going to go and pick them up with Alicia in our new plane.
Well, and I think Alicia, please share that may very well happen.
Yeah, so I was commenting that in March, the Association of Asian Realtors Association has chosen Miami as their destination for their conference. So this is the first time they've picked Miami. Normally they would go to, San Francisco, LA, Vegas. So it's a huge opportunity for us. I hope you all get involved with that. I'm going to be hitting you up for sponsorships because actually our President of Development Sales, Jesse Otley, will be the incoming president, I guess, for that event. So I think they've definitely identified Miami as one of their cities of choice, so we can look forward to that as along with all of our traditional and expanding theater markets.
Thank you. With that, Adriana, since the last panel didn't get the opportunity for Q&A, I think it would be appropriate for the folks in the audience if you want to do a few minutes of that.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody have any questions for our panel up here? Questions? No? Oh, we got one over here.
Yeah, all great stuff about the growth and in both the business and the residential sector. The challenge that we have is still trying to, especially if we have 2 million more people, is for the infrastructure to keep up. And so how do you all view that, and how view whatever progress we've made, and how do you think it will catch up eventually?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that I'm looking forward to with Trump's infrastructure talk, and I thought, Miami has such a huge advantage because for the most part, we don't have to rebuild anything. A lot of our stuff is brand new. So I think that we have a big opportunity to cash in on some of that and add to our infrastructure in a big way. So I think that the government, at least rhetoric, is very much aligned with wonderful opportunities for us here.
I think there are certain things that need to happen, particularly in Brickell and downtown Miami, we need to get rid of that bridge, for sure, Hopefully one day somebody will, say we'll do a tunnel, I don't know. There was money at some point for a tunnel in Brickell Avenue, and unfortunately built the Americans Arena. That was where the funds went. unfortunately or fortunately, not making a judgment. But again, I think that there are other things. For example, Brickell needs a school, a public school, good public school. If we think that we're going to attract more families to Brickell, then there needs to be a better school somewhere. That's
The charter school got approved.
yeah, the charter school got approved. We are doing something with, I think it's Southside School, as part of our Capital Grill project for Brickell. But yeah, certainly there is a need for infrastructure. At the same time, people are going to walk a lot more in Brickell. I think Brickell City Center is going to be a huge game changer for the behavior of people that live in Brickell. You're going to be able to walk to a cinema, you're going to be able to walk to Zara and buy yourself a shirt. And I think with Uber and other types of technologies, people are going to be a lot less dependent on the car. And it's funny what Jay said, that it's real. People are using less the cars, and these garages are really car storage spaces more than a real garage. And we want that to happen. We want people to walk more, to use other means of transportation, not just a car.
And let me add, it's ironic you asked that question. I happen to serve on the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. And for our authority, which is funded solely on user fees, on tolls, for the folks that use the road, we're not funded by gas tax or federal tax or FDOT. We're actually creating smart corridors on our highway systems to create leverage for the private sector to come in with their capital and technology to implement the new technologies in transportation, to create Uber pooling along the expressway systems, because as difficult as it is in the urban core, it's just as difficult and challenging for the folks coming to the urban core from the West Kendalls, from the Dourals, from South Dade. And so we're currently exploring that. There was a smart plan out there that was released by the county, and I think as a private community and a business community, we really need some support, and resounding support, to help push that, not only locally, getting the support around it, but really throughout the state and FDOT and for federal funding.
And it's going to change. Sorry, again, just one thing. On the commercial side, I think here downtown Miami is going to see a big demand for office space, particularly when the Bright Line is finished and the trains come directly from Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach to Miami. I think you're going to see a lot more office development in 2017 announced, 2018, which is great for us. We love to see more office buildings planned in downtown and in Brickell, because that's what's going to drive rents up. And it's going to normally trend the office buildings, new office buildings command higher rents. Higher rents are paid by good companies, and good companies pay good salaries, and good salaries result in higher rents for residential. So it's all feeding of each other, and definitely I think the train is going to have a big impact in downtown Miami, and we want it to continue growing in that way.
Talking about transportation and infrastructure, our next development we're going to break ground in January is on Northwest 25th Street and South River Drive. It's a limited service hotel, and we're just a block away from the new intermodal. Have you seen the new facility for the MIC, the intermodal? It's a wonderful facility, and you can see that it's expected, that it's underserved. It's expected to have a lot of growth and a lot of use. All the transportation services, transportation systems from Miami-Dade converge on that point. It's next to the car rental and the airport. Is a great facility. So that infrastructure and that growth, it's happening, it's there.
I was wondering who was developing that every time I went to my board meetings. Now I know. Any other questions? We have.
Of the recent condo sales, I'm wondering what % is being occupied and how many are put up for rental right away?
So I always remind our developers that all of the first round of buyers are really investment partners. That's what they are. In today's world, most people don't know where they're going to be 3 or 4 years ahead of time. So we fully expect that when these condos are completed, I would say no more than 20%, max 30% of the original buyers are going to move in. The rest of those buyers in today's world, with the large deposit structures, etc., are planning on holding these units and then selling them down the road, if ever, because a lot of them see the trajectory of Miami, and this is patrimony for their kids, the next generation, their retirement, etc. So I would say about 70% of these units are going to go on the market. A lot of them will throw it on the market for rent or for sale. If somebody comes along and wants it and the margins are there, they'll sell it. But it isn't this, oh my God, I have to sell this unit. That's really not what's going on here. That's quite the exception. So it's a long-term financial play.
Yeah, and to add to what Alicia said, you know, I think in a sense we've sort of found a way to control the supply of condos, because we're asking for these big deposits, 50% deposits, and we're seeing also that when people close, they're closing all cash. So they really don't owe money to anyone, so there's really no rush to sell. You know, you see listings, and the listings are there for sale, but the unit is rented. When you call, we ask our brokers to call and find out how many of those units that are listed for sale are actually rented. And 80% of the units that today are on the MLS are rented. So that means that the buyer the seller is really not in a rush to sell. If he gets his price, he sells. If not, he continues making a very good return, much better, 3 or 4 times the return that he would have made if we had put that money in the bank.
The key really is occupancy. And when Carlos said we need 2 million more people in Miami, but it's an interesting number, why not? You know, in the last cycle, people kept saying to me, who's going to live here, who's going to live here? Now it's very clear that people are going to live here, people are going to move here. It's just a question of what the adjustment is going to be in the rental rates, and I think we're already seeing slight downward pressure, but we know that's going to recover, it's going to recover quick, and I think it's a good opportunity, a good breath of fresh air to get more young professionals in the neighborhood. It's a rejuvenation, if you will. Our neighborhoods are hugely important.
For commercial and residential, where do you see the relationship with the older European countries in relation to Miami? So the Germanys, the Englands, France, how is that playing in your game?
I would say on the commercial side that when you look at investments in Germany and other countries like that, they're looking at cap rates of 1%, if that. So when you look at US #1, South Florida #2, with the growth potential that we have in place, with the quality of the credit that we many times offer in commercial projects, whether it be a national credit tenant or the like, I think looking, even if it's a anemic 5%, you know, on a, you know, Walgreens on 8th Street, if you will, which seems like a low cap rate compared to other markets, and it is, but then again, Miami is a more attractive market. That's still light years ahead for those European investors. So, and yet, it's a place that they know. Europeans are used to coming to Miami. You know, Miami is going to continue to grow. It's still the, you know, the northernmost city of Latin America, as they say. Latin America is not going away, and so for business reasons, for personal reasons, we're going to continue to attract that capital. And certainly being, you know, on the East Coast, we have something that New York cannot offer. Yes, a lot of Europeans go to New York as well, but certainly we all know we have that New York doesn't have. And so for that reason, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that capital.
Talking about the European, we did some research, and maybe this data can also help. We did some research on the passenger, on the travelers on the Miami airport. There's 40 million passengers every year through the Miami airport, of which 21 million are domestic, are U.S. travelers, and 19 million are international. Those 19 million are almost half and half Europeans and South American. That's kind of the ratio, you know, it seems that South America will be larger travelers than Europeans, but is matched the amount of proportion of European travelers that are coming through the Miami airport.
Hi, good morning. I'm Tom Havron with Newmark Grubbs Capital Investment Group. The question for the panel is, being a broker, we hear about these wonderful things going on. Is there a local group or an organization that y'all will interface with that helps do trade missions or helps promote the E5 program that we should be looking at getting involved in so we can have that exposure in our capital markets, commercial space as well?
Yeah, that's a super question, and I would encourage you to call the mayor and everybody else in our local government and ask them, because the other day I was speaking with our mayor-elect, I guess now, and I was telling him, you know, it's fascinating and I think embarrassing that most of the heavy lifting for promoting our city is done with the cash of the developers and on the back of the realtors. In our company, Cervera Real Estate, we've traveled almost 200 times in 2016 abroad to carry the message of Miami, to carry this brand forward. And most of those trips are paid for with the marketing dollars of our developers and very little support. And by very little support, and this is, I'm just crazy about it, we don't even have a decent video, and if you know of one, please call me, promoting our city. So while there are trade missions, and the governor does some, the DDA does some, etc., I really think that we fall short with government support in collateral materials to promote the city, and I think that that's in large part because the developers and the real estate community have done such a great job. So the Miami Board of Realtors, Teresa Kinney has been a wonderful leader in doing that. We're now the largest association in the country, and we have more international liaisons than any other association. The DDA sponsors some, the governor does, the mayor does as well. But the best thing is call your local realtor who's selling condominiums in a big way and say, where are you going next? We just came back from Mexico. Carlos and I were both there. George is a great spokesperson as well, along with many of the other developers who travel. Shahab was there, Taylor was there, so a bunch of the guys go down there. They promote the city. I was just in Peru. I was just in Argentina. We were just in London. So there are great opportunities.
So to give you a little bit of information about TV, Alicia, we should talk Bisnow TV. Something we gotta get it going here.
And to add, I think the Beacon Council really needs to, in its upcoming transition, needs to take a much larger role in that area specifically.
We'd love to see it, yeah.
And hopefully it does. I think it's all dependent on who's the next leader of that organization and how it stays intact or dissolves or forms.
I mean, the DDA has done a good job. They've got a lot of collateral materials. They've translated stuff into Chinese, into Portuguese, into Spanish, and I think it's a good start. However, a city like Miami should spend, what, $250,000 on a video? Something like that. I mean, you're probably spending, we're spending 50, 60, 70 on our project videos. And it's amazing to me. And by the way, Miami Beach is not much better. It's really incredible what we don't do to market our city, considering the amazing reach of our brand.
We're afraid. Politicians, they're nervous of the backlash, unfortunately so, and that puts the burden on us. Any other questions in the audience? Adriano?
No, I think that's great. Everybody, round of applause for our panel. Before I send everyone off, I just want to let you know our next event is December 13th. It's going to be at Atten Brickell at the hotel. It's our residential and multifamily summit. So please, I hope you all can make it, and we will see you next time. Thank you again so much.